I think it's very odd that such an important letter has gone missing. I very much doubt it has. I just wonder perhaps if the Home Office are maintaining their silence when it comes to extradition requests.
We were just hearing there from Jonathan Reynolds about the case of Andrew Tate. There's a story in the Times today that the UK missed an opportunity to return Andrew Tate to face rape and human trafficking charges here after failing to respond to an offer to extradite him from the United States. American authorities were reportedly baffled after a letter from Florida's Attorney General stating his willingness to arrest and extradite Tate was delivered to the Home Office on March the 12th but went completely unanswered. A spokesman for Lord Hermer, the Attorney General, denied he received the letter. Jonathan Reynolds has just told us the same. And Hermer said he has no responsibilities over extradition anyway. Well, Claire Pearsall is a former Home Office advisor who can guide us through what's going on here. Good morning.
Good morning.
Just for starters, for people who are coming to this story fresh, perhaps, could you explain the charges against or the allegations against Andrew Tate at the moment?
Well, there are numerous allegations against Andrew Tate and his brother, and the ones in the UK relate back to alleged crimes between 2012 and 2015 in Bedfordshire, for which an arrest warrant was issued. Now, there are also claims of other assaults that have taken place in places like Romania. So there is ongoing legal conditions placed upon the Tate brothers in Romania, and that case is going through the judicial system currently. So I think that there are a number of charges against them, of which the Tate brothers deny all allegations against them. They maintain their innocence. So I think it's really important to point that out. However, I think the argument now is, how are these individuals allowed to travel across the world, put all of their travels on social media, when the victims in many different countries are left without justice?
And this is the point, because it does sound like a significant miss. It's very unusual to hear from American politicians who say, yes, we definitely sent the letter, and get the UK side saying, well, no, you didn't, we never received it. What do you think's going on here? It sounds unusual.
It's incredibly unusual to have another country offer on a plate the ability to apply for an extradition treaty for two individuals. And for that seemingly to have been missed by both the Attorney General and the Home Office, I find incredibly strange. I think there are some serious questions needed to be answered by the Home Secretary. Now, it's important to say that the Attorney General doesn't have absolute responsibility over extradition, but surely that matter, if it landed on his desk, would have been passed over to the Home Secretary, who indeed does. So I think it's very odd that such an important letter has gone missing. I very much doubt it has. I just wonder perhaps if the Home Office are maintaining their silence when it comes to extradition requests. It's normally been the policy that you neither confirm or deny that you've made one. But to go out there and say you never received it, I find very, very strange indeed.
Yeah, it's very unusual. You're right. They could have maintained this idea that we don't comment on extradition policies. How much of this do you think is being clouded by the fact that there is already a bit of a political storm against Lord Hermer? He's perceived as a bit of a block on Labour government policies. He's a friend of Keir Starmer's, but he's not necessarily overwhelmingly supported by the rest of Keir Starmer's senior team. I mean, if it looks like he has missed this could be a real problem for him.
It absolutely could. There was a lot of opposition internally to the position of Lord Hermer being given Attorney General, which is an incredibly powerful position. So I think that this gives a little bit more strength to the arguments that he should not be there. I wonder if he will survive any reshuffle coming up, because there have been a number of decisions that I think have baffled both the Labour government and certainly the opposition benches as to why the decisions have been made and what authority he has and what knowledge he has of cases. He seems so far away from what the policy should be when you look at things like the Chagos Islands and his dealings with that, and now with the Andrew Tate business. You wonder why he's in position and how long that's sustainable.
And just finally, what are the chances of the UK being able to extradite Andrew Tate and his brother now that they've flown to the UAE? I think they're in Dubai at the moment.
According to social media, that's exactly where they are. Now, the UK can ask the Emirati for an extradition treaty from the UAE, but they would have to have some serious evidence to be able to back that up, as you would suspect. But given the cases that are ongoing, I wonder also perhaps if it's muddied by the fact that judicial proceedings are still going on with Romania. But it would be incredibly powerful if the Home Secretary did ask the Emiratis for the extradition warrant to be issued, and for that to be sent, and actually the Tate brothers to be held to account for the crimes that are alleged against them.
It's a really good point. Claire Pearsall, former Home Office advisor, thanks for your time this morning.
Thank you.
And we will keep across that story for you, because as one of you has pointed out, there's no name on this. Yes, we're going to force school kids to watch adolescents to learn a lesson, but we're going to let Andrew Tate and his brother free to carry on their misogyny and people trafficking. Those allegations against both of the brothers are incredibly serious. And I think that this story indicates a real miss for Keir Starmer's government. And I wouldn't be surprised if it does keep coming back to the question of, as Claire was saying there, America says they sent this letter, they've got a specific date for when it was delivered, and yet nobody seems to have seen it.
Can I offer another theory? And you tell me how conspiratorial I'm being. Everything we're doing is in the context of maintaining good relations with America at the moment. Everything we're doing. Donald Trump regards Andrew Tate as a beneficial figure to America. He was presumably at least consulted in Andrew Tate getting out of Romania in the first place. I just wonder whether we wouldn't want to be extraditing Andrew Tate at a time we're trying to do a trade deal with Donald Trump.
Yeah, it's entirely possible. But I think and that in some ways would be even worse than an admission that we have just lost the letter. And I think whatever it is, however this has happened, the fact that the Times is now able to report that there was an offer there, and there clearly was an offer made, and it was not taken up for whatever reason, is some serious question to answer for the UK government.
I just hope there's not someone junior who's genuinely lost the letter.
I think that would be very difficult.
It just seems unlikely, doesn't it?
The Times has reported that the UK missed an opportunity to extradite Andrew Tate from the US. That was despite an offer from American officials, which was in the form of a letter which is reportedly sent directly to the Home Office, potentially to the Attorney General, Lord Hermer. The government has made a lot, and many say rightly so, about the toxic influence of the Tates on British youth, and the Prime Minister talked about the drama adolescence and how that should be sort of taught in schools. How does this story sit with you, Rebecca? The fact that the government in the UK never responded, didn't extradite, and now the brothers are in Dubai?
So it's really, really, really important that we draw a line between the fact that he is a negative influence online, which is not illegal, and the fact that there are realistic, meaningful accusations against him of things that are illegal. Now, the fact that we are trying to rail against toxic masculinity and the epidemic of violence against women and girls, that is not strictly relevant, because much as it's a reason that I hate Andrew Tate, it's not a reason that he should be extradited to anywhere. However, meaningful legal accusations, and even Robert Jenrick, who is not exactly a bleeding-hearted lefty, was saying earlier this week that his alleged victims deserve due process. The fact that that could have happened and didn't happen is an egregious failure. And I think I don't know the reason why this didn't happen. My worst case scenario, and I very much fear this isn't the case, is that Andrew Tate is a complicated, but in some spheres of the current American administration, well-liked figure. And I really fear that not extraditing him could have been to do with the fact that he was brought from Romania to America because of his appeal and popularity with certain characters within the American administration. And if that's the case, then that is genuinely heads should roll. That is the biggest failure I could possibly imagine.
Yeah, and that is the suggestion which has been made on this programme already today, that there is the potential there that the UK government is suggesting the letter never arrived to avoid a diplomatic incident with the US administration, essentially.
And if that is the case, then I've been a really, really vocal supporter of this government. I voted for them and I have a real affection for them, but that would change for me.
Yeah.
Because to pretend that you care about violence against women and girls, the best case scenario I can give you is that there is also a meaningful accusation of sexual assault and abuse in America from somebody who we know he was in a romantic relationship with, and there is some evidence to suggest that he hit her and she did make a legal accusation. So my best case scenario is the reason they didn't do it was to let that play out, but I have no idea whether that is the case or not, and I hope it is, but I don't know if it is.
I mean, Ed, however you look at this story, everybody was aware that the Tates were in the US. Everybody in the government would have been aware that the US has an extradition policy. Whether or not the US offered, as they say they did in a letter to the Home Office, to help speed that extradition process along, the UK government could, and some might say should, have extradited anyway.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting point. It never occurred to me, to be honest. I mean, I saw the Tates leaving Romania, and that seemed to me an extraordinary thing where it appeared to be the case that the American government had intervened on the basis that these were, special people who should be brought back to America. I mean, if it had been an ordinary US citizen who had mugged someone on a Romanian street and been arrested and put on trial, I doubt the American government would have intervened. There's no doubt that they seem to have been a special case. And I thought it was brilliant when the Romanian government arrested them. And I thought, to a certain extent, because these people have this kind of outsized influence, it may sound a bit odd, but it was a very brave thing the Romanian government did to see this through. I mean, I think there are even Romanian politicians who were saying it was a terrible thing to arrest the Tate brothers. So that's point number one. I think your point about whether the British government should have then intervened if there are charges against them in the UK is also well made, because if there were, we would do the same if we were aware of anyone accused of a crime residing in America. But then it also goes back to, weirdly, Trump and tariffs, because don't forget, Mike Lynch, the late Mike Lynch, who tragically died in a boat accident, was a cause célèbre for many, many years because he was extradited to the US on charges that were then dismissed after a lengthy trial of fraud, effectively. But it became a huge talking point because of the perception, and it may well be true, and David Davis, the Tory MP, led the charge on this, that the extradition treaty we have with the US is completely one-sided. It's extremely easy for the US to get hold of British citizens and extradite them to the US. It's much more difficult the other way around. So again, going back to this idea that we have a special relationship with the US, it is skewed in many, many respects.
You've worked in government. I just want to know, because I've not worked in government, Ed. Is it plausible that someone says somewhere, we could extradite Tate, but we also try to do a deal with Donald Trump here? Anything we do that could compromise that should just be paused. Does that quiet word happen in government? Is that? I'm not saying you'll know if it did on this occasion, but does that sort of thing happen? Is it plausible?
It's not hugely plausible. I mean, it's a judicial process. If there's somebody who's accused of a serious crime that was committed in the UK, and we have the opportunity to bring them back to the UK and put them on trial, it would be impossible, in my view, for a minister or a politician to say, this could be a bit embarrassing, can we not do it? Now, obviously, you can drill down into that. Netanyahu is off to visit Hungary soon. Some people would say it's outrageous that the Hungarians aren't going to arrest him because the International Criminal Court has issued an arrest warrant. That's politics for you, either side of the argument. But for something like this, I find it staggering if a minister could intervene and stop the judicial process. It'd be a matter for the police to apply through the Home Office for the extradition warrant.
Ed, you're like the Mystic Meg of news, because in the last few moments, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has, in fact, arrived in Hungary. The Hungarian leader Viktor Orban has said the International Criminal Court's arrest warrant will have no impact on Netanyahu there. We'll bring you updates on that story throughout the day. There you go, Ed. Not just here for the panel, but here to predict what's coming next.
Just brilliant. I'm segueing you through every single story.
You couldn't have teed it up better.